Hi, it's Kirby Sommers, and I welcome you to the Epstein Project podcast. Today is Tuesday, March 23rd, and just yesterday we heard, to our delight, that Judge Nathan denied Ghislaine Maxwell bail for the third time. So we're all like, like really, really happy today. Um, okay, I want to discuss something. I was really upset yesterday. I had been, reading some of the old documents from the lawsuit between Virginia Giuffre and Ghislaine Maxwell, the defamation lawsuit, and I stumbled upon some of the old, horrible, atrocious articles and fake articles that Ghislaine had the Daily News write and had all of her friends write, and I don't know if Mark Zuckerman owned it in 2015, but I discovered things that I just made me so livid that I had to leave and go for a walk, and kind of like I was fully enraged for the whole day. And I sort of almost have calmed down, but I want to explain certain things to you. And in order to do that, I need to pull up the article because I want to share some of the behavior that happens to a woman when she is trafficked. So, for example, when I was trafficked, I had behavior patterns that I read in one of the newspaper articles written about Virginia to cast her in a bad light, um, to try to make her it look like she was a horrible person. But I want to explain certain things to you because I think unless you hear it from someone who has been there, and right now Virginia is still involved in various lawsuits. So, and she's been trashed. I mean, she's been trashed for so long that I just wanted to sort of explain certain things to you. Before I get started, as I usually do, I want to thank you. I want to thank you for being so incredibly supportive on Twitter. I want to thank you for buying my books. The sale of the books that I write about this case and or my life is what I use to pay my bills so that I can keep working on this case. So if you want to continue to support me, that's how to support me. Buy my books or make a one-time or recurring contribution on my website. And now, of course, I've relaunched my Epstein Project newsletter, which is now almost 2 years old. And so you can do it that way too. So I want to thank everyone who's done that, and those of you who are patrons on my Patreon. Yeah, thank you so much. I think it's this Thursday we have our third Ask Me Anything, and I am looking forward to that. Okay, I'm gonna try to find this, and I'm gonna hope that I don't lose you because this is I'm doing a new thing today. All right, so hang tight. All right. The article starts, Jeffrey Epstein accuser was not a sex slave, but a money hungry sex kitten. It's like that alone is just horrible. And it opens with a photograph of Prince Andrew with Virginia. And it says that I mean, they just called her horrible names. Uh, One sentence says that she bought fancy clothes and she drove around in Epstein's Mercedes. Well, you know what? When you're traveling around, I had to do the same thing. When you're traveling around, in his case, he was a fake billionaire, but he was still a millionaire, and he was taking her on trips to compromise powerful people. And he would tell her she had to go shopping. So, yes, she had to go shopping. I had to do the same thing. I was kept on a very short leash, And literally I had to buy a certain lingerie. In my case, it was Legibee, which is very expensive. I had to buy certain stockings. In my case, it was Fogel, very expensive. I had to buy very expensive lingerie, very expensive clothing, just everything was expensive. I didn't have any money left over. I would struggle to pay my rent, and I was the sex slave of a billionaire for a great number of years. Um, all right, so this goes on to say, oh, well, she never looked like she was being held captive. Um, she and the other girls would walk out smiling, blah, blah, blah. Okay, well, again, the fact that people don't seem to understand the terminology, I'd like to get this corrected once and for all. When you're a sex slave, in the sense that Jeffrey Epstein did to not just Virginia, but with so many other young girls, and in the way that Rickless did with me for such a long time, you're not like locked up in a room. You go ahead and you try to live your life, but you really can't live your life because you have this big dark secret, and there's the few people that you allow into your life. You tell them about it, but guess what? They don't understand it. They don't because they come from a different world. So if you're telling them that you need to go shopping, in my case, I remember whenever I needed to go shopping for lingerie or something, I couldn't even ask a friend to go. And after a while, that became very challenging for me because I missed the connection with just regular people. And so I would literally buy for my girlfriends and or my male friends. I would buy them something. I would take them shopping with me, and just for the sheer few hour or two, like few moments that I had to try to experience a normal life, I would pay them in the sense that I would buy them something so that I was buying their time um, just to accompany me, and that is what Virginia did too. I think it's hard for normal people to grasp that when this happens to you, you're completely isolated. You don't really belong in that world, but you no longer belong in your old world because your life is so different. And even when you try to explain it to your friends, whatever friends you have left, the reaction is is really quite striking in the sense that some people will immediately think, "Oh, you're a horrible person. How can you do that?" Blah blah blah. Other people will be completely jealous. They will think that you're living some kind of fantasy luxury life, and really you're not. You're not, because having to have sex with someone that you have not chosen for yourself is not an easy thing to do. Like, you literally have to find a way to make your real self disappear and become like this sex kitten that doesn't really exist. I know that in my book, The Billionaire's Woman, I write that at the time I remembered Rita Hayworth saying they fell in love with Gilda for her very famed character Gilda in the movie Gilda, but they took home Rita Hayworth, and that all of the men in her life were disappointed. And that's pretty much true. Um, Men have this fantasy, and nowadays we know that it's sort of like a porn star image of this girl slash woman that they have purchased and lured and are now, you kind of lose yourself. So you don't have another life. Your life is gone. Your life as you know it is gone. And so in their mind, they see you one way. You're really not that way, but you have to pretend to be that way. And you have to pretend to be that way when you're around them. And you can only really relax to whatever sense that you can relax. It was hard for me to relax, for example, afterwards. It was hard for me to know where I was. I know that for years I did not remember what I looked like unless I was standing in front of a mirror. That is how lost you become. And I was an adult. And in Virginia's case, she was a child. She was 17, 18. That's still a child. So what I had done was I started to go down some of the links of these horrible articles that were written about Virginia as recent as 2015. And some of the articles I was able to find, and some of the articles went to sort of like pages that had been removed from the internet. And I was like, wow, because I remembered how Ira flooded the internet with fake articles about anything I wrote. It was almost like he had some AI machine where he could feed in an article I wrote and it would spit out thousands of them with just mumbo jumbo words, and or he hired people to write things that were unflattering about me, and or he would, what he just for years, it was just very challenging, and things would lead to a fake website owned by a fake person. I mean, so that standing here in 2021, understanding what's happened with the Harvey Weinstein case that Ronan Farrow brilliantly wrote about for the New Yorker, Army of Spies, taking a close look at what happened with some of the girls that were trapped in Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell's really a viper's nest of nastiness, and remembering my own life of servitude, sexual servitude, um, which was really difficult to break away from because again, you lose your. I'm going to speak for myself. I lost my self-esteem. I did not. If I didn't know what I looked like until I was standing in front of a mirror, well, imagine how I felt when I was standing in front of a normal person. I used to feel that, oh my God, they must see the immense shame on my face. Therefore, I cannot talk to this normal person because how am I going to have anything to relate? How are we going to find a common language? There was no way. And so on the few occasions that I found myself with quote normal people, I felt like an outcast. I would just go off to a corner and people thought I was just aloof. They thought I was, they thought I was, they thought everything except the truth. And the truth was that I just could not operate because I didn't have the skills yet. It took years before I was able to just be sort of normal because you never grow out of it. You've seen too much of this very bizarre world that many of you are finally getting a look at, where powerful people who are otherwise respected members of society that are looked upon as the pillars of society, in all of their fields, whether it's business, Wall Street, politicians, a judge, an attorney, where the role is reversed. These are the monsters. And those of us who have come from very modest backgrounds, and have looked up to these people our whole lives, suddenly, we're hit with like, oh, this is what this world is about. But even as it's happening, you kind of think, oh, well, maybe this is how it's supposed to be. This is how it happens. And then, I used to think, oh, okay, well, I used to think about these Hollywood actresses and how they married these people. And it seemed like, well, then maybe this is how people meet. I didn't know. It took me a long time to figure out that the world is not just a place with predatory men. Um, I didn't make notes for today's conversation because I just wanted to open up and share with you information that I just felt I needed to get off my chest. Um, I'm going to go back here to one of the articles. And so one of the lines that everything bothered me that I read that was written about Virginia at the order, by the way, of Ghislaine Maxwell, who's just, I can't even believe her family and her brother have been going around giving interviews as if Ghislaine Maxwell is some kind of normal person. She's a monster. Um, so what she had her PR people do is write this stuff. And so one of her friends recalls, oh, she was in there for a half hour and came back with a couple of grand and said, let's party. And that goes back to what I said. So like when I needed some human companionship, I paid for it. And if it meant I had to pay to take people partying, I did that. And if it meant I had to pay for them to get on an airplane to meet me in a different state, I did that. I did it because otherwise I would be alone. There would be no one there. Except that when you're doing that, you don't have any money for yourself. Like when I was involved in this, yes, I was taking care of my mother. I was taking care of my friends. I was getting the clothing that I needed to be Miss Sex Goddess. And at the end of it, when I finally left him, after he promised me for years and years and years that I would always be taken care of, that I would never need for anything, um, he reneged. So, like, literally, he just kept me in there with a lie for many, many years. And because I did not want to feel that I was being purchased by him, I really didn't take any money. I didn't make any demands on him. Whatever he gave me to go buy this or go buy that or go do this or go do that, I did. And at the end, I walked away with barely $100 to my name and started from square one. Um, so I just want to say that there's at least now people are beginning to understand that there's entrapment. People do become sex slaves. No, we don't live in a locked room. You're kind of locked. It's a psychological thing they do to you, and when you lose your self-respect and you lose connection with your inner person, it's hard to get that back. And again, I want to say that I was an adult when this happened to me, and someone like Virginia was a child. So, she already had a difficult childhood, and so she didn't really have like it's something to go back to. Eventually, at some point, I was able to reconnect with the person I had begun to be. I reconnected. I remembered some of my earlier achievements, and I built on that. Um, and if we have not heard from more victims and more survivors of human trafficking, women, and even guys who have been trapped into relationships, and I'm going to call it a relationship because I don't know what else to call it. We're still coming up with new terms. Me Too is a new term. Sex slave is a term that I started using a long time ago, and it still applies. But we're still coming up with words and phrases to describe what's been around for a very long time and what few people have been able to really understand. So the public, I believe, still has a lot to learn about how we had to survive during the time we were in there. And yeah, that meant that we didn't know how to spend money. We didn't know anything about money. It was misspent. And in the end, you're left with nothing. So in any event, I just think that what these people do in trying to make someone who's already gone through hell look even worse is unforgivable. You've gone, you have reduced yourself to human garbage, literally, and then you're trashed. And it's not like it ever stops. To current day, not only does Virginia and a few of the other women who have stepped forward have fake information posted online everywhere, I do too. I mean, I've had to battle this for 30 years. That's a long time to have to battle this. You know, I heard one or two of the victims say that Ghislaine Maxwell would make phone calls to their clients, discouraging them from buying their work. And the same thing happened to me. My clients, when I started a life, they went from being really happy and being my client to suddenly not wanting to work with me. It took a long time for me to really piece everything together. Um, because in my case, Ira had a former federal prosecutor, who I now, in hindsight, everything tells me that this guy was sort of connected with other aspects of our government. I'm not going to get too specific. But he pretty much had him glued to my thigh for many years. And it's really interesting because the only time that it ended, I mean, he became inserted into my life in 1993 when I left IRA. And in 2015, just as Ghislaine was being sued and everything was being put out into the open, um, odd things happened to me again. And this guy, this attorney who had been part of my life, getting all kinds of information from me and kind of making me believe, oh no, he's not doing anything to you. Oh no, that doesn't have anything. Just gaslighting me for such a long time. In 2015, in March of 2015, he finally went away. And then I read this, and this is dated March 1st of 2015. And all these people, they are interconnected, which is why I've become such a big part of this case. So, if you have any questions or want to make any comments, please do that. And remember, I am having the Ask Me Anything on Patreon this Thursday, and you're welcome to come over. Okay, I'm still a little bit upset over the knowledge that not only has this happened to Virginia and the others and myself, but that it's currently happening to so many people that we don't know about. That they're experiencing this hell, and that they too probably don't have anyone that understands what they're going through. Or that even if you sit down and explain it to someone, that they grasp it, because most people don't grasp the enormity of this crime. This crime is not just sexual. This crime It's psychological, and it does affect every aspect of your life for the rest of your life. For the rest of your life. I mean, there's no amount of money that, let's say, someone like Virginia can make in a court of law uh, that will make up for the harm and the damage that was done to her. Okay, I am going to thank you for listening, and we'll do this again next time. All right, thanks. Bye.